Money FM 89.3, the best of the afternoon update. The Afternoon Update with Lynlee Foo.
Good Monday afternoon to you. It's Lynlee with you, and you're listening to Industry Insight. Now, factories across Asia are under pressure, rising costs, unpredictable supply chains, and a shortage of skilled workers. But instead of cutting jobs, many manufacturers are leaning on automation and AI to make their operations smarter and their people more capable. So what does this mean for Singapore and Southeast Asia as we try to hold on to our role as a global manufacturing hub? Joining me now is Scott Wooldridge, Regional President, Asia Pacific at Rockwell Automation. Welcome, Scott.
Good afternoon, Lynlee. Thank you for having me.
Now, I understand that you've just released your 10th annual State of Smart Manufacturing report, which surveyed over 1,500 manufacturers worldwide. So let's start with the big picture. What are some of the biggest findings from this year's report?
I think at a high level, Lynlee, there's some similar results from the prior year. Companies are struggling to deal with the impact of tariffs and inflation. So many companies are not in a growth mode in terms of volume. They're trying to optimize their productions, manage their cost base, and introduce flexibility into their manufacturing base to try and be able to manufacture different products in fast cycles in different countries and locations to offset potential inflationary actions or tariff actions. In parallel to that, there's a strong driver for resiliency, not only to secure supply chain, but people are looking at cybersecurity with more and more interest and the impact around cyber events in manufacturing, and also looking at the shortage of skilled workers and how that's impacted, as you said in the introduction, by automation and AI. So the drive of automation and AI is certainly accelerating in manufacturing to offset some of the impact of skilled labor. But that flexibility and resiliency are top of mind when people are looking at their manufacturing footprint and the investments they're planning to make.
Scott, from an engineering standpoint, what does a smart factory look like compared to 5 or 10 years ago?
Yeah, there's been a definite transition in the types of technology deployed and the design philosophy of the factories. If I went back 5 or 10 years ago, people were looking at developing a single plant infrastructure to make 1 or 2 products and thinking that they would have a 5 or 10 year cycle for manufacturing that product. And that they'd build the plant to optimize around a single product. Now, we all know consumer trends are faster than that. We all went through COVID where the demand for vaccines and protective equipment outpaced the ability to supply, as an example. We've all seen the boom in EV vehicles, which has slowed down temporarily in some markets. So to counter those fast consumer trends, people are looking at more flexible plant systems where you can run 10 or 20 products without fundamentally changing the mechanical handling or the control system. And that means you need much more flexible, adaptive systems that can handle different types of product variations without having to completely re-engineer it and reprogram it every time. So people are looking to get more out of their plant assets, more flexibility, more adaptability in terms of how they design a plant, because they just can't pick what the trend in products they're producing is going to look like 5 years down the track.
Okay, so it's becoming more modular, I suppose, and reconfigurable so lines can pivot quickly to new products or volumes. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot more modular systems, mechanical handling systems like magnetic-based independent cart systems, which can operate at different speeds and different configurations without physically re-engineering the mechanical side of it, and more modular control systems that are using more adaptive technologies like AI that within certain parameters, the system can reconfigure and re-optimize without having to be reprogrammed. So if you change your specification of an input to a product, some of the raw materials, or you change the dimensions or the colors or some of the output criteria, It's not a reconfigure and reprogramming effort. There's a lot of inline detection systems to look at the quality, look at the parameters, and automatically adopt and adapt to those changing parameters.
Well, it certainly sounds like a very different picture from the old fixed assembly line. Now it's all about flexibility and speed.
Absolutely. And I think another big trend is if you go to any greenfield site or even a brownfield site now, there's a lot more robotics. We have had inline robotics for years, pick-and-place robots on a fixed manufacturing line. But the materials handling piece, from the warehouse to the manufacturing lines and back again, is more and more being automated with autonomous mobile robots or automated guided vehicles. And I think that trend has heavily accelerated the last 3 to 5 years. And I know we have a manufacturing plant in Singapore where we've deployed 140 AMRs in our own facility. What was a lot of mechanical carrying between the warehouse and the production lines is now fully automated. And I think that is an absolute trend that we see accelerating across the industries.
Okay. Before we talk about that, I want to talk about cybersecurity, which you briefly mentioned at the top of the interview. That came through strongly in the report. Why is manufacturing such a prime target, and how are companies dealing with that?
I think that's very interesting. 3 years ago, cyber wasn't in the top 5 considerations that manufacturers were thinking about. 2024, it was number 3, and 2025, it's number 2. The only thing that beats cyber as a concern is how do you manufacture costs to offset inflation and tariffs? So it's a key concern around manufacturing. And I would say we should extend that into utilities infrastructure, power generation, water, because the control systems are common across those types of sites. And there's a strong link to many manufacturers in terms of the utilities that they need to operate. I think it's a lot of manufacturing systems were deployed and designed disconnected from the internet, that have their own proprietary network. You wouldn't touch it. You would design it and run it as is for 15 years, and you might not upgrade the control systems. With the need for more agile plant design and more adaptability, you have to have a fully integrated plant floor into your ERP system. So as the schedules and plans change and the customer demands change, that real-time information flows through automatically to your control system for the scheduling and planning of your production. And most major companies have done that. What that means, however, is your control system, which historically was disconnected, is now completely connected to your IT infrastructure and to the internet. So historically, plants didn't upgrade. Now they've got legacy systems that may not have had virus protection or updated network protocols connected to more modern IT infrastructure. So it's identified as a key risk. You need to connect to the ERP to have adaptable, flexible manufacturing, but you've got legacy plant equipment and legacy systems that might have been deployed 15 years ago that you can connect, but they're certainly not cyber secure. So we see a rush of manufacturings looking to upgrade their networks where they can, looking at deploying more threat detection, a lot of it using AI on the edge to try and proactively detect threats into the manufacturing environment. And if you've got a greenfield site or a brownfield retrofit, most automation solutions now come with a more embedded approach to cybersecurity.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
There's standards for the industrial environment for cybersecurity. So we encourage all manufacturers to look at that and just build it in the design of a new site or a big retrofit standard. Don't try and bolt it on as an optional extra because you really need to secure it at the network and product level.
So you really have to bake it in from the ground up, I suppose.
That's the most effective way and the cheapest way. Not everyone has that flexibility, so you can do targeted upgrades and put edge detection using AI agents to try and provide some level of security. But it is a challenge.
Okay. Scott, zooming into Singapore, how do the report's findings align with Singapore's broader push for innovation in manufacturing?
So I think if you look at Asia Pacific in general, the findings are that Asia is adopting smart manufacturing technologies as fast, if not faster, than, say, Europe and North America. And that hasn't always been the way with automation and smart technologies. So that's an interesting trend in itself. People are looking ways to optimize their production and identifying that it doesn't matter what geography you're in, the cost of labor increases over time. You do have skilled shortages, and you need to future-proof yourself against that. And people are seeing maybe the historical rise of China in manufacturing, and now there are labor shortage challenges and cost challenges in China. So I think for plus one locations that are looking at having a labor cost advantage now, they're more looking proactively at deploying smart instances of automation and AI to try and protect that advantage I've got with enough innovation to keep them flexible and adaptable and minimize the risk of needing high amounts of labor. Now, Singapore is labor constrained at the best of times. And I see Singapore as a leader in the region. There's no shortage of companies that are adopting smart manufacturing technologies. And I think it's a real credit to sort of the government, academia, and business relationships that exist in Singapore, that there's a three-way partnership in a lot of areas that has been focused on smart manufacturing and Industry 4.0, both on an education around what's possible and then on supporting enablement through different initiatives. There's some areas in Singapore like the Smart Industry Readiness Index, SIRI, which is a benchmarking system to see how aligned your individual manufacturing plant is to Smart Manufacturing 4.0 guidelines and initiatives. It's something that we've trained our consultants on, and we do audits for companies every week of the year. And it's a really great benchmark because it's government-sponsored and has founded on a lot of good research across different consulting firms globally. There's also the digital connectivity blueprint that the Singapore government promotes. So I think it's a great starting point when you have strong government sponsorship for smart manufacturing. You have alignment through academia, where there's experience centres built and training and education around the latest technology. So people coming into manufacturing already have some skills from day one out of their university experience. And then the manufacturers who are in Singapore tend to be MNCs that look to use Singapore as a pilot location for some of their lighthouse sites, to use it as an example of what can be done in a higher cost country that has other advantages, but labour is a challenge. So I think there's a good community and there's a groundswell of knowledge and interest. We took the same approach. Our global lighthouse, as an example of best manufacturing practices, is in Singapore.
Okay. It's good to hear that Singapore is setting the pace, but I think the real challenge is making sure innovation reaches across the entire ecosystem, not just the big players. So speaking of which, compared to its regional peers, how advanced do you think Singapore is when it comes to smart manufacturing? Again,
I think against regional peers, I think Singapore is as equally advanced as any region. And I would say in Asia Pacific, the leaders in smart manufacturing deployment are China and Singapore. I know Singapore is much smaller with a smaller base, but just because of the demographics and because of the types of manufacturing, whether it's semiconductor focused or life sciences focused, they tend to be leading industries that adopt smart manufacturing technologies initially. The other one would be around EV and EV battery, but semiconductor, life sciences, and EV battery tend to be leading industries in terms of adapting to smart manufacturing premises first. And certainly the pharmaceutical and the semiconductor industries associated with Singapore are quite strong.
Okay. Scott, let's talk about people. There's often fear that automation means job cuts, but your report suggests the opposite. What did you find?
I think for more than 200 years, everyone's been concerned around automating processes and automating plants, reducing jobs in manufacturing. I don't think that's a true outcome. If you look at the manufacturing workforce as a percentage of the population, For the countries that rely on manufacturing for a key component of GDP, it stayed relatively stable, but the types of people and the types of skill sets have changed. I think it does need, we talked about autonomous mobile robots, and that would be replacing some of the traditional jobs on a forklift, as an example, moving pallets, moving crates, moving materials. But when you adopt AI, there's a certain level of skill set needed in the workforce to help maintain the systems and support the systems. So we do find it leads from more manual tasks to more engineering type skill sets. And the workload sort of balances between those areas. Then I think the aim is to get those plants that can flexibly produce more products. So you are getting more efficiencies because you have that flexibility. But that also takes some design and support and maintenance.
Interesting.
So you can develop a plant that's lights out. Lights out is a term where there's no workers on the shop floor. Mm-hmm. We don't think that's the natural trend. We see more what we would call cobots, people interacting with robots or leveraging robotic technology to enhance what they're doing for the more manual tasks or the heavy lifting tasks. And the robots are more agile and more programmable and more safe to work around humans than what they've been before. But we certainly see that it needs a combination of people and machines to be successful. When you start talking about a flexible, adaptive manufacturing environment, you still need that human design knowledge and support and maintenance capabilities to support the infrastructure that you're building.
Scott, very quickly, we're running out of time. Looking ahead, what emerging industrial trends do you think will shape the next 5 years of manufacturing in Asia Pacific?
So I think I've touched on a few of those already, but just to reiterate it, I think any product you buy moving forward that you deploy into a manufacturing environment will have embedded artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. It'll become more and more common. You won't need a data science team to program your artificial intelligence. It'll be like if you buy a pump or a drive, it will have energy efficiency calculations built in to drive energy efficiency. If you buy conveying systems, they are more intelligent around speed controls and design. If you need inline vision detection, it will be built into vision systems to be able to detect anomalies in real time and improve your quality cycles. So AI at all levels, supported by cloud infrastructure. If you want to deploy quickly across multiple plants, the best way to do that is to deploy your IT stack in a cloud environment. Historically, manufacturers have been reluctant to do that, but that's a strong trend we see to support rollouts fast and be more cyber secure, rely on cloud environment versus bespoke systems on a plant floor. And finally, that autonomous mobile robotics trend. More and more linking fixed plant equipment with warehousing, with mobile platform management, mobile robotics, materials handling. So AI, cloud, AMRs are the three trends we see that are moving very quickly, and we think they'll just be commonplace 5 years from now. Any competitive manufacturer will have deployed technology around AI, robotics, and AMRs.
Scott, thank you so much for sharing those insights with us.
Pleasure. Thank you for the time. It was
Scott Wooldridge, Regional President, Asia Pacific at Rockwell Automation. You've been listening to Industry Insight on Money FM 89.3.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.